Hey everyone, we got a special guest here with me today, Andy Nunemaker. He is currently the founder and president of Dynamis, the former president of EMS Systems, held a number of executive positions at GE, holds an MBA from Harvard, throws the best pool parties in the greater Milwaukee area. Very honored to have you here today.
Thanks, happy to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Andy, so let's go back about 12 years, put things into context. You're working at GE.
Yeah.
You have a great position there. What was your role there, and why did you leave to go to EMS Systems at that point in time?
Yeah. I mean, I went to GE straight out of getting my MBA and held a number of different roles. Probably the most fun one was the president and CEO of GE Healthcare for Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia. About 14 countries in that part of the world. You know, in a different city, in a different country every week. It was just a great role with a great team. Came back here to lead an internal project that was actually really similar to what I'm doing today. It was rolling out a configuration engine and sales platform and CRM to all of GE Healthcare. And you know, as I looked at it, you know, a career at a company like that, you kind of know every few years you're going to move up a little bit, and you're going to kind of have this trajectory. And you could map it out until you're retired. But most people don't retire from GE. Most people jump off, take that learning and apply it somewhere else. And so I wasn't really looking, but I always had an eye out there for what I might want to do next. And an opportunity came up to take a very small business, carve it out and create a SaaS company, which was fairly new back then.
So you left there, you go to EMS Systems. What state was it in at that point in time?
Yeah, so EMS Systems was really the brainchild of two emergency room doctors here in Milwaukee, Ed Barthel and Chris Felton. And they were working within a pool of ER docs that would loan themselves out to different emergency rooms in the upper Midwest called Infinity Healthcare. And they knew that there was a problem called ambulance diversion, where an ambulance would pull up to the hospital with you in it, and the hospital would say, hey, we can't take any more patients. And they'd have to drive around looking for the right place. And they'd use phone calls and faxing and paging to figure this all out. And it was a big mess. And they thought, hey, you know, maybe we could create a software program that would easily communicate the status of all these hospitals. So they created it within Infinity Healthcare. It worked in Milwaukee. It worked in a few other places. And then they looked for a way to carve it out and create basically a business around it. And that's where I came in.
And what was it like for you mentally and emotionally to go from the stability of GE and you're living in Sydney and you're traveling all over to scrappy startup mode in Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
You know, it's interesting because you have to check your ego at the door. You'd walk in with the GE business card and say, hey, I'm Andy, GE, and doors would swing open and you'd be meeting the presidents of these hospitals and everything else. Well, then you say, hey, I'm Andy with EMS Systems. And they're like, what? Who? What do you do? And you know, you went from having an HR team and a finance team and all this support structure built around you to your finance and your HR, and you know, it was different and it was tough. And the biggest question we had is, could I handle an environment like that where you don't have that support network that I was used to for a big part of my career?
Mm-hmm. And you took it from. What was it like at the beginning, and then when you sold it in 2010, right? So 4 to 10.
There were basically 4 or 5. There were 5 of us when we carved it out. There were 2 developers, 2 customer service folks. That was essentially the core team. And then we started getting some more sales, and we got some early wins, and we were able to hire a professional sales team. We were able to hire more developers. We were able to actually take our one product that was an ambulance diversion product and create a few other products that were needed in the marketplace. And luckily, you know, we probably attempted 5 products, and 3 of them worked out really well. A couple of them were okay. So as we grew, we basically took that first one and cash cowed it, and then, you know, created new ones to keep the overall growth going. And we did that throughout the life of the company.
Yep. How did that corporate experience at GE help when you transferred to EMS Systems?
You know, I think the way I looked at it is at GE, I was just practicing different leadership styles and different management styles. So I would practice hyper delegation, for example, and just hire really smart people and sit back and let them do all the work. And it worked out really well for me, and it worked out really well for them. So I was kind of getting my groove on GE's dime, because, what's the worst thing that could have happened? Maybe I get fired and I go work for another big company.
Right.
So there didn't seem to be much downside to practicing these different styles of management, styles of leadership, observing good bosses and bad bosses, and then kind of coming into my own of what my style would eventually be.
And what would you say the keys were to scaling EM Systems so quickly?
Yeah, well, luck is probably the number one. We were at the right place at the right time. There were no competitors, so it was essentially a blue ocean. And it was a land grab, if you will. We would just go out and knock down hospital after hospital, state after state, region after region, and get our system. And by the time we sold EM Systems in 2010, we had 70% of the hospitals using our system. 2 years later, as part of the parent company Intermedics, we had 80% of the hospitals using that initial system. Now, you think about the math, you can't double that every year, right?
Right.
So you knew we were going to hit a plateau with that. That's why every year or so we develop another solution. We go out and listen to the market, listen to what their needs were, and figure out what else can we provide the same captive audience of happy customers.
Mm-hmm. And you took that from a small company, you sold it for several million. What was that process like? Was that nerve-wracking? Was it thrilling?
Yeah,
was it?
Well, here's the thing. All of my money was tied up in EM Systems. I didn't have any net worth outside of it.
Really?
Right? So it was going to be all or nothing. And yeah, there were some sleepless nights, and I kept me up at night. It was a great company. It was a really solid company. But you're worth a lot on paper, but in reality, you have no liquidity. So, I was living in the same house I'd lived in for 10 years. And I was driving the same car I'd driven for 5 years. I'd never bought a new car in my life until then. And, we got lucky with the process. We hired an excellent investment banker. We hired an excellent law firm. And we ran a competitive process. And it was basically a bidding war. And because we had that right team and we had a solid company and we had the right advisors, we kind of pegged what we wanted for the company. And we ended up getting over $20 million more than that at the end of the day. So
Nice.
Then everybody was happy. But until then, there was a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah. So you do that, you have a successful exit. Why were you motivated to start another company and start Dynamis?
It felt like the right thing to do. I mean, we had some success with the first one. I thought, hey, we can just take all the things we did the first time and apply them to this new industry and this new market. And we tried that, and some worked, a lot didn't. Every company is different, every industry is different, every market is different. Every decade has its own different challenges, and what worked once doesn't necessarily work again. And so I think what we learned the second time around is, go forward and do all the basic things like listen to the market and listen to your customer base, but also have your eye on the results and do a lot of what we call A/B testing. So we tested the product, we tested the messaging, we tested what our target market was, and we were able to pivot when necessary. We didn't really have to pivot with EM Systems. We got really lucky that it was just a straight trajectory of growth. With Dynamis, we've had to pivot a couple of times, and we've been thrown, with the Affordable Care Act and things like that, we've been thrown a few curveballs, and we've had to react.
How has that been, running into those road bumps? I know it took longer than you had planned for Dynamis to really get off the ground.
It did. And so that was tough, and that's a blow to your ego as well, because you think, hey, you don't have the Midas touch, right? You've actually got to work really hard to get this right. And there's a chance it could fail, and there was a chance it could fail in the first couple of years. Our investors were very patient. Our investors are professional investors that have a portfolio of companies, and they were more patient than I think I would have been as an investor. Mm-hmm. But they knew we had light at the end of the tunnel. They knew we had the right team, and they knew we were doing the right things. And when we ran into a brick wall, we backed up and went in another direction.
Yep. And I've heard great things about working for Dynamis and with it. What do you do? What are certain things you do to make sure you have a great culture that other companies really miss the ball on?
That's interesting, because I can't put my finger on that. But I think culture is an extension of the people who work in the company, especially a small team like ours. Every personality, you can't hide anywhere, right? We're all together, we're all working together. There's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. You can't just keep your head down because that'll get noticed. And so it's probably a reflection of my personality a bit and a reflection of the leadership team's personalities. Good news is, our core team, we've all known each other for a ridiculously long period of time. Our sales manager, Tom, I've known since he was 19. Our CTO, Bob, I've known since we were both 18 and going off to college together. Alex, who's our client service manager, known him since he was a sophomore in college. So we've had a lot of history together. And the core team, we're extremely loyal to the company, and we're extremely loyal to the company's success. And I guarantee that's going to be the core team as we run this thing forward.
What are your keys to keeping those employees motivated?
I think transparency is key. So, if you have a hard day, or you lost a customer for some reason, or something went wrong, or you had a flaw in your product and it got noticed by a client, and you take that personally and kind of feel set back. And so what we always try to do is we say, yeah, it's like a roller coaster like this. There's an up day and a down day and an up hour and a down hour. But if you step back and you look at the trajectory is going up, all right? And it's going up consistently, even though if you go into the granularity, there's a really great day and a bad day. But it's all moving forward and it's all moving up. The company's twice as big as it was last year. It'll be twice as big next year, if not more. So we're doing all the right things, and the end results are showing, right? And so, what I constantly try to do is if someone just got knocked down or they didn't get the sale that they thought they were going to get, just sit back and look at how well we've done over the past 6 months or over the past year.
Yep.
Look at how that's going to translate into going forward.
Do you have to constantly remind them of that? Obviously, working in the startup, it's a grind. There's really high highs, there's very low lows. Do you have to change your management style from a corporation like GE where there is that stability, it's not as life or death maybe?
And especially in, I call it the dark days when we weren't sure if this was really going to work, and we weren't sure if this was going to resonate in the market. We weren't sure if this was going to transform, the agencies that partnered with us. Every little success story or every little win, we'd have to kind of hammer home and remind each other, hey, this is why we're doing this. All right, we're making our partner agencies' lives so much better, and we're making their clients' lives so much better. And we're taking an old, antiquated 20-year-old process and turning it on its head. And here's the results. I just got a voicemail yesterday from a broker down the road. He's like, oh my gosh, we used your system for the first time. They loved it. The CFO jumped in and he said, I've never seen anything like this. And he's like, I can't wait to get this in the hands of all of my clients. And it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Because what we've worked so hard on is actually resonating in the marketplace. But you've got to drill that home to our team every day so for example, our client service team is taking help desk calls. They're usually getting people who either they don't get it, they're having a problem, so they think, hey, everybody's like that. And you got to remind them, you're helping get them to a state where they're going to delight their clients. And here's the hundreds of others that have come before them, and that's exactly what happened. And I'm surprised at how often I have to step in and remind them of, hey, this is the big picture of why we're doing this.
Well, I think that's so important. Have you always been good at celebrating those victories? I know, especially for me, starting off, go get it, I was terrible at it. We'd accomplish something, and then, there's so far to go, so it's okay, on to the next thing. Nice. But you realize how important it is for culture to actually do that.
I'm learning that as we go. I'm naturally, I'll say, okay, high five, great job, and now let's go tackle this problem, right? So we'll celebrate for 5 seconds, and then we'll spend the next 5 hours, digging down and hunkering down. So it's just funny. Our sales team has a bell in the office that you can hear throughout the whole office. It's this big old ship's bell, and whenever they get a sale, the person that landed the sale gets to go ring the bell, and everyone stops what they're doing and comes out and applauds. And it's just, I probably would not have thought of that on my own.
No, like the Wolf of Wall Street.
Right.
Except for what we're doing actually is helping people.
What traits make a successful entrepreneur?
Maybe resilience, maybe the ability to, after having a really tough time, whether it's a day, a week, a month, a year, being able to dust yourself off and bounce back and figure out what went wrong and what you need to do to make it right. I think checking your ego at the door is a big thing. So, we went from running this huge company to running this huge division of a much bigger company back to a team of 3 or 4 people, right? And a tiny little office in West Dallas, right? So you can't have an ego if you're working in that environment, I don't think. And that's tough. It was tough for me.
Yeah, I mean, you go from posh job at GE to EM Systems, which ended up being a wild success, and then you're in West Dallas,
Back at it again.
luxurious West Dallas
Yeah.
with 4 people. Do you just like the thrill of getting stuff off the ground, or what makes you
I
tick?
don't know. It just seemed like the right thing at the right time. And when we interviewed folks in the industry, there seemed like there was a need for what we were about to do. And then we took the leap of faith that we can actually go and accomplish it and do it better than anybody else in the marketplace. So there's the gamble there. What if 5 other people were thinking about the same thing and they had a lot more money behind them and a lot more resources, and they all got there first? Then we would have had a really tough time.
Do you think that could still happen? You had another blue ocean here, right? You're
Yeah.
providing something that's not really on the market, and you're finally gaining some traction. Could a big player come in and wipe you out, or do you think they'd?
Definitely. Not wipe us out. We've
Right.
got actually a very good head start right now. And if you look at our trajectory versus some other folks that have been in the industry for a while, our first 4 years are much more successful now that the thing is finally working. So I think we've got a 2-year head start on anyone else. But yeah, of course someone could come in and dump $10 million behind a solution that's similar to ours and grab up market share, especially if they already have 2,000 clients in the industry. We only have 130. So, our goal is to turn that into 500 or 1,000. But yeah, it'd be a lot harder if someone else came in doing what we're doing.
Why do you think no one's done that yet?
Well, I don't know, but I think the interesting thing about what we do, so we're offering a service to insurance agents that they don't necessarily know they need, right? They're using Excel spreadsheets, using crappy old technology, but they've been doing that for 20 years.
Right.
So until they lose to an agent that uses our system, or until they hear from their best friend that owns an agency in another part of the country what we've done to transform them, they're not out looking for what we're doing. And I think because they're not knocking on people's doors looking for the solution, other companies in the industry and other technology providers, this really isn't on their radar screen, exactly what we do.
And you also invest in early stage startups with the Golden Angels, right?
Yeah.
What do you look for when you're doing that?
We together, and we do everything at the Golden Angels as almost a committee. Nobody goes out and does a lone wolf investment. We either decide together we're going to go forward with this company or we're going to pass on it. And what we look for is obviously indications that whatever solution they're building, there's actually a need for it in the marketplace. But the most important thing is the team. And does the team have experience doing this? Is the team willing to listen when the team's market research comes back different than their assumptions? Do they have the ability to pivot? And we really look for a team that we could work with as active investors. We try to take board seats on all the companies that are in the portfolio. And so it's really the maturity of the entrepreneur. And maturity doesn't mean age. So we've invested in entrepreneurs right out of college, right? Who had all of the raw material that we were looking for and had great ideas.
How important is the person or the team opposed to the idea? What do you put a certain weight on either?
Team's probably 80%, ideas 20%.
That makes sense.
So our team at Dynamis, we had the right team. We had kind of the right idea at first, and we realized it wasn't exactly right. And so with that team, we were able to pivot until we found the right path. If we had a group of kind of dig your heels in, no, I know I'm right, the customers are all wrong, the market's wrong, they're idiots, they don't know what they don't know, well, we would have plowed right into the wall and had to shut the thing down.
Let's switch over to health.
Okay.
I've run into you at the gym
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
How important is that for entrepreneurs, and what's your routine?
It's, you know what, it's important for me. I can't translate that to whether it's important for everybody else, but I have to get up early in the morning and run 3 miles. I have to go to the gym every morning. I have to get about 8 hours of sleep every night. And if all of that happens, then I can take on whatever's thrown at me in the day. Right? If I've done my run, I've done my gym, I've done all that, and then I go off to work, anything that happens, it's going to be a good day still. And that affects just my psyche. It affects my, how I react to issues, how I react to people.
I mean, I can speak to that. After Go Get It, I gained 30 pounds in the first 6 months. My lifestyle changed, and I didn't look at a scale. And then I went home and weighed myself on Christmas, and I looked down and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
And you're sick all the time, and that can get neglected easier. You have people posting on social media, "Put in an 18-hour day," it's and
Yeah, well, because I keep a healthy work-life balance, I also respect that in our workplace. So, if people want to go out and go to the gym or do something at lunch or this or that, let them.
yeah.
And everyone's different. You can't say, hey, because this works for me, then you're going to have to do the exact same thing. I think we're really good about respecting people's work-life balance. We're not asking for 18-hour days.
Yeah. And as far as Milwaukee goes, you're very involved. Do you want to touch on your philanthropic endeavors, or what makes you so involved in the community?
Yeah, it's that's also interesting, because I think my eyes were bigger than my stomach a few years back. So I'm like, well, I want to join this board and that board, and next thing you know, you're on like 7 or 8 boards. And so I've really narrowed that down to the things that I'm passionate about and have an affinity for. The biggest one is obviously the Milwaukee Symphony, where it's a cultural institution. It's a part of Milwaukee. It's a part of what makes Milwaukee a world-class or a major league city, just like the Bucks or the Brewers do in the sports side, and just like our parks do on that part. The Milwaukee Symphony plays that role, and we've got to fix our business model. So, my latest project is rolling up our sleeves as a board and a team to really save the symphony and allow it to be this great treasure for our city for generations to come. So that's what's keeping me up at night right now. Dynamis used to keep me up at night for the first couple of years. Now that that's on a pretty good trajectory, now this is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah. And as far as kind of the young entrepreneurship community in Milwaukee, you've been great to me since I started my company. Whenever I've needed advice or anything, you've almost taken me under your wing, and I know a ton of other people can say that about you.
Yeah.
Why are you so accessible?
Because people did it for me, right? I had great mentors and role models in my early days. I had people that I felt, some of my early bosses, Sandy Thornton at now AT&T, what was Southwestern Bell, and Dennis Cook and Bob Cancelosi at GE, I felt like they were doing, half of their job was to make me successful. And they were just watching out for me. They were like my guardian angels. And because I had that early on in my career, I don't know any better. That just seems to be the right thing to do then when you move on to do that to other people and to help other people and lift them up and celebrate their success.
Yeah. It's awesome. And as far as Milwaukee goes, what would you say the upsides and downsides of starting and running a business here are?
The upside is there's a really nice, tight-knit community, and everyone, at least from what I can tell, wants to help each other and wants to see more of us succeed in our startups. I've never run into anyone who's either jealous of someone else's success, trying to pull them back down. It's always celebrating the success, wanting everybody to grow, wanting your friends to do well, and I think that's a really healthy environment. And that's not the case everywhere, but it's certainly been the case here in Milwaukee. I think the downside is we don't have a strong bench strength in things like development. I think our effective employment rate for developers is 100%. I don't know of any developers that are looking for work. They've all got work, and I know a lot of companies like ours that are looking for developers.
Yeah.
And having, unfortunately, to go outside of Milwaukee and use remote teams. And to me, that's unfortunate. We love having our team all together, and we've been lucky to find some really good team members, but it was hard, and it took us 6 months to fill one of our key positions. I think we're a pretty great place to work.
Yeah.
So if we're having that kind of problem, I don't know, maybe that says something about the market. Maybe we're not all that great a place to work. So there's something to learn from that.
And you've accomplished a lot. What would you say your biggest regret or mistakes?
I try to live my life so that I don't have regrets. And so, Dynamis for the first few years, I'm like, oh my gosh, was this a mistake for the first couple of years? And when we write the book at the end of it, it's going to be a really good story. But for a couple of years there, we were all thinking, hey, what have we done? Did we just make a big career mistake? And some of our investors, one of our investors who's a great friend and mentor of mine, said, Andy, I almost would rather see this fail and me lose my investment, but for you to learn a valuable lesson about what went wrong than to see it succeed. Mm-hmm. What kind of advice is that? But, he was saying, look, not everything's going to work, and I'd rather have you learn the lesson now, dust yourself off, and go on and apply that to the next thing and make that wildly successful, is what he was trying to say.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It seems like in startups, it always takes longer, more work, more time, energy, money to get something off the ground than initially planned. In most cases, I know that was my case, and patience was difficult, especially at the beginning, but it's still thrilling, so you keep going.
Right. We had, the thing that kept us going was you'd hear the success story, and they were few and far between in the early years, but you saw that what we were trying to do was working. Right? And those little glimmers of hope said, okay, what went right there, and how can we translate that into all the rest of our client base? So it was a lot of just listening to how the clients were using the solution, listening to how they were winning, and that really changed our messaging.
And what's the most fulfilling part of what you're doing now?
It feels good to have created something. It feels good to have taken an idea and turned it into a successful company. And that just feels good.
Got it. And then final question. What would you say the proudest moment of your career has been?
Well, that's a hard one.
Most rewarding of what?
I'll tell you what's very rewarding, and I've said this in other settings. When you bring someone in that wants to run their own business, and they're there, and they're at your company because they want to learn from you, and eventually they want to be like you and run their own thing. And to see the people that are doing that now is really, really exciting. So people that were at EM Systems that are out having amazing careers now. That's fun and that's exciting for me. And there's people at Dynamis that have said, I want to run my own business in 5 years or so. And they're learning how to do that at Dynamis, and they will take a shot at it and run their own thing in a few years. And to me, that's rewarding and that's exciting. That means, the mentoring and the being there for them and the helping them along is planting the seeds of their future success. And whether or not that's part of Dynamis, that's irregardless.
Yeah, you're making a huge impact.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah. No, well, thanks so much for all you do and for dropping by this morning.
Yeah, happy to.
All right.
Great.